and welcome back to another podcast of Heal Without Harm, the podcast for you who is frustrated with the medical system and you are looking to take your health into your own hands. You're advocating for yourself and looking for better and more natural answers. And today we are joined with a client success story from Tammy. I've worked with her for the better part of a year now, and her story is worth sharing. She's been through numerous different parts of the medical system and has a lot of wisdom to share. And this podcast will help you learn from her lessons. Tammy, welcome.
Good morning.
I'm excited to get into this. We'll probably navigate and bounce around to numerous different portions of your history, but if you don't mind, give yourself a little bit of an intro, because I know you from pickleball, I know you from weightlifting, and it sounds like the more I talk to you, that's not your norm. That's not where you started. You had a little bit more cardio fitness background. So if you don't mind, give me the quick 2-minute background on all your fitness and that kind of stuff.
All right. Well, I've always been active. I played sports in high school. Then through college, I was a runner, would run the little, loop runs, the 5Ks and things like that. And then had my own treadmill, had a Stairmaster, had free weights. So I had my own routine. What I didn't realize until I was preparing for this is my husband reminded me that for probably the better part of 15 years, I did this pretty much the same routine every day, expecting different results. So I stepped out of my comfort zone and joined a gym. So I won this gym membership for 2 weeks. And I thought, okay, the first set I gave away. The second set, I decided, okay, I can go. I was not going to be a gym rat though, because I had equipment at home. So I stepped into the gym, which was Omnicut, motivational fitness, and started with a trainer. And I'm now a 7-year member of that gym. I've had a trainer for the last 7 years as well. One that kind of centered on more of the cardio fitness, and now one that's more into weightlifting, which I've really gotten into. And now I've delved into yoga and bar classes, and now Pilates is my thing. I've been going almost every day and still lifting. And then I got into pickleball. So I've kind of, in the last 3 years, widened my horizon of fitness.
Yeah. So there's like 4 different things I want to ask about, but one of the big ones that I'd like to start on is, you said not only did you have your own essentially routine that you would do over and over and over again for years on end, but it sounds like most of that was cardio focused. Is that correct?
It was.
So what made you switch from cardio to strength? Because in my world, we know that strength training is generally going to be more responsive in regards of like muscle building and like bone density and all that kind of stuff. So what led you to switch from the cardio to the strength training?
I started dating my current husband, Scott, and he was a lifter. Mm-hmm. He had done some triathlons and things like that. And so he brought me into the realm of, it revs your metabolism. It keeps your metabolism higher during the day than walking or running and all the cardio. So he was lifting. He got me into lifting. He got me into the different areas of the body and what to focus on. And you start seeing results faster than walking or running, different kinds of results. But I liked I liked the feeling of the lifting of the weights and also what it was doing to my body.
How many years ago did you start the strength training?
Probably 20 years ago.
And what results are you talking about? Because I've seen them in multiple people, but I've always strength trained. So I also I would say, I'm not familiar with like doing cardio for a long time and then switching to strength training. So when you say you got results and you got results quicker, what were those? Like, what did you feel, or what did you see in the mirror?
The toning, you could see some muscle definition,
okay,
which, as a woman can kind of be scary for some people. It wasn't for me. I feel like I lift heavy for me, but I don't feel like I'm walking around like a gorilla, as people would think. But in talking to my friends, they were horrified. They thought I had really lost it because I was going to bulk up. I was going to gain all this weight, and then I didn't. And so it was a transformation that they could see as well.
So let's go on that, because I know a lot of females, or at least in the social media world where we all see things and get our perception of the world, there is this big like stigma or this myth of if I lift weights, I'll get bulky. And the joke that I always say is I've been lifting weights like the majority of my life and I'm not that bulky, at least in my eyes, but we can go into body dysmorphia and stuff. And so what you said, like, you know, these gals were afraid that you were going to like bulk up and get all this weight and stuff. So did you get bigger and like look like a gorilla, like you're saying? Because in my eyes, you don't. But was it just a change of body composition, going from like not having muscle definition to having muscle definition? Like,
Right.
what were those changes that you would say?
Yeah, definitely the muscle definition. I did not bulk up. I didn't gain weight in terms of, I mean, if I would have had a body scan then, I assume that it would have gone from more muscle than I had, which is always good. I mean, definitely it helped with the posture. It helped with sleeping. It helped. I mean, I have a low resting heart rate, so my metabolism is already low. And so it helped keep that rev too. And then having kids in my 40s, that was problematic for gaining weight, and I didn't. So it helped get through that transition of being a parent and, you know, gaining weight through pregnancy too.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. So do you still do cardio, like mix in?
I do. I get on the Stairmaster. I have still have a treadmill. I do different routines where I put it on hills instead of just flat. I don't run as much as I used to because I had meniscus surgery and they took out about 75-80% of the cushions in there.
Yeah. So is running bothersome for the knee?
It is.
Gotcha.
It is.
Okay. Well, that's all really helpful because I think you can speak to the fact that you went from cardio to strength training and saw benefits and didn't get massively bulky, right? And so you're proof that myth is essentially busted at this point. And so if we move on to a little bit more of like the medical system and kind of what all you've been through in regards of navigating different specialists and different practitioners and how billing goes with all of that crap and probably a lot of pitfalls. I'm curious, what all experience do you have going through the medical system, whether it's for you or whether it's for family members? What are some different times that you've had to utilize the medical system quite a lot?
Well, I have two children, and our youngest daughter had a liver transplant at age 18 months. So imagine having a baby you take home, you think everything's okay, and 6 weeks later, you're starting to see all these things that don't make sense. And so going back to the doctor to say, you know, my baby's not sleeping well, not eating well, my baby I feel is losing weight. And that started the whole roller coaster of her bilirubin's high. She needs a transplant and having surgery at 6 weeks old. So here I am, a 43-year-old parent. Thankfully, I was older, I felt, so I had some tools in my toolbox. I grew up in a family of 8. I started babysitting when I was probably 8 or 9 years old. And so I had that experience, which helped. But that started the whole roller coaster of, I mean, I was a parent, and this was my 6-week-old baby, and they were going to open her up. I mean, it was definitely some scary stuff. And so to me, knowledge is power. And so I did as much reading as I could and got on the internet and read as much as I could about what was going on in her life, reading other parents, you know, journals of what they were going through. And it was and still is, because now she'll be 21 in 2 weeks. It was a lifelong learning of going through the medical system, of advocating for a child. So you advocate for yourself every time you go to the doctor, or
Yeah,
I hope you
absolutely.
do. But advocating for a child is totally different because you're stepping into their shoes and you want to know what the doctors know, but you want to know it in terms that you can understand it. So I would read up on what was going to, you know, this procedure or this surgery. And through it, I realized that you don't have a lot of choice in some of the things because she needed a liver transplant and there's not much you can do beyond that.
There's not much alternatives to that.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, beyond that. So, but I learned to navigate the system by asking questions. And some of them it was some tough love because there were some practitioners who didn't like questions, who didn't want you to ask questions or ask for beyond this procedure, what's going to happen. Because I wanted to know the longevity of how long is this liver going to last, and all those things, and the medication and what's that going to do to her. So I became one of those that probably well known in Children's Mercy. And I would get those questions and they would say, "Are you a doctor or are you a nurse?" And I would say, "No, but I read a lot and I want to know what's going on and I want to be an advocate for my daughter." And so you find out that asking questions is not some practitioners don't like that, but that wasn't going to change what I was going to do because
and it shouldn't, but it definitely does, right? Because you're worried about like what they're going to say or what they're going to think. And I think that a lot of practitioners are used to knowing it all, at least on the topic that you're there for, right? Which is help with medical stuff. And they're not used to people asking questions.
Right.
And I think that's slowly changing, right? Like I think you were probably more abnormal back then asking all the questions, and hopefully it's becoming more normal for people in your situation to ask those questions, because what I usually see is after they stitch her up, like they're done. Like they may have some follow-up appointments, but they're done. And so when you say, what am I supposed to do with my child when I go home? What do I expect? What are the medications? How does this change? What does all of this look like? They may not have the answers, first of all. And then even if they do have the answers, they may feel like you're questioning their authority or questioning their knowledge, but you're really just trying to gain insight because you have to be the parent to go home and like take care of this kid. And I think that's what's so scary now that I've got two of my own is like you are now their caregiver. And I understand what you're saying when you say, I need to know this well enough because, like, granted, at that age, 18 months, the child's not going to ask, like what's going on because they can't. Right. But if you're thinking of a 3-year-old, 5-year-old, 10, 12, 15-year-old, like you are the one who is supposed to know that information. You can't just call the doctor every time your child has a question. And so I'm glad that you did all of that. And I'm sure 20 years ago, it was much more challenging to find information than it is nowadays. But if there's anything I can do with this podcast and everything that I do with my practice, it's to essentially get more people to do what you did then and still do now of asking those questions, because it's going to make the providers better and it's going to make sure you understand things better. And I guarantee you, if there was a second Tammy in the world to compare yourself to who didn't ask all those questions, you got 10 times better outcomes because you asked all of those questions along the way and kept challenging the providers.
Right. And I wanted to know, is this medication necessary? Is this dosage, is it low and we're going to build up? I mean, I wanted the least amount of medication in my daughter as possible. And
Absolutely.
Imagine an 18-month-old who was then taking 16 pills a day. And it was overwhelming. And so what I learned from all of that, and I carried over into my life, was not so much to question I'm not questioning the authority. I'm questioning, okay, does this procedure make sense? So if she's going to have a transplant, why do we have to have this operation now? Let's just do the transplant, things like that. And the medication was, I always, and still today, want to take the least amount possible. Is there an alternative? Is there something I can do to prevent that? Or taking that medication? And all my providers, because I've been with them long enough, know that is my question, because I want the least invasive. I want the least amount of medication. And some of it, yes, thyroid medication. I'm on heart medication. Yes, you have to take those. There's no alternative. And what I don't like as well is functional medicine. I mean, those doctors, they're not covered by insurance. What they do and their knowledge in keeping me and others well, we have to pay for out of pocket. And so it's a preventive medicine practice. The way I see traditional medicine is it's reactive. It's you come in and you're sick. And I remember asking my doctor, what can I do so that I can age better? What do you mean? That was the answer. What do you mean? I said, okay, so what can I do to prevent getting osteoporosis or being on cholesterol medicine or this or that? And it was, you're doing fine. You're healthy.
Yeah, just keep doing whatever you're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
But I want to go beyond.
A lot of those practitioners, they feel like ending up on the medication is inevitable
Right.
And I always tell people like yourself who is healthy, like truly healthy, not by his definition of like, oh, you don't have high blood pressure, quote, yet. The majority of Americans are not unhealthy enough yet to get treated by the medical system. And so they're in this limbo where they're not feeling right. They have some brain fog. They have pain or achiness in their joints or their muscles, but it's not so bad that the doctor is ready to prescribe a medication for it. So the majority of the time they say like, oh, you're doing fine. We'll probably just need to put you on it in a couple of years. And then it's just a waiting game until you like come and use their system. And so when you ask the questions of how do I prevent this, most of the time they don't have the answers. And it's not, most of the time it's not because there's any malice intent or like ill intentions. It's true, just simply lack of knowledge. They don't know because that's not what they were taught, or they were taught, or they were just simply not taught preventative type things. And so that's where finding practitioners like ourselves or any other functional medicine doctors that you're talking about is challenging, but the more that we can get people to start utilizing them and spending their like dollars out of pocket, the more those practitioners can become cheaper, more available, closer to you, especially if you're in rural areas and things like that, because we need to support that system because it actually is preventative. And in the long term, you will likely spend many, many less dollars overall. And so I'm curious in regards of our time together, what did you show up in our clinic with in regards of like achiness in joints or muscles when we first met back at Omnicut Fitness? Do you recall?
Yeah, it was interesting that you had this pop up at an event at the gym, and at that time I was wearing 2 braces on my elbows. So in one elbow I had tennis elbow, and the other elbow I had golfer's elbow. And I had been wearing these braces to sweep, to lift at the gym. I mean, they were achy all the time. And I looked back and I went to PT, traditional PT in 2019. So when you came into the gym, it was 2023, maybe the end of 2023.
That sounds about right, yeah.
And so I had been wearing these braces for 4 years.
And just living with it, right?
And just living with it because I had gone to PT, the traditional route, and then the other from my PCP, my general practitioner doctor, was I was just supposed to I could take some muscle relaxers or I could take a leave until the pain went away. Well, 4 years, if I would have been taking 4 years of a leave, I don't even want to go down that route, what would happen to my liver, my body? But that was not an answer for me. So I just suffered through. And that's when I found arnica, which was a plant-based.
Yeah, which I honestly thoroughly enjoy. So
yes.
Thank you for that.
And so things like that. And so when you came to the gym and I just went over and thought, okay, I'll see what he says. And I told you what I had been experiencing and what it felt like. And you had me do a couple of movements and you said, yeah, I think it's something maybe in a muscle under your rotator cuff. I'm like, well, what do you mean? And so he said, okay, I don't have time for this, but you come over and I'll give you an hour. Cause there was a line of people behind me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you were only there for a certain amount of time. So then I came over to your practice and it was like the perfect fit because it was in maybe 2 or 3 sessions. I have not worn those braces since. So I went from wearing them for 4 years to not wearing them at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a couple of sessions, just from finding the root cause of where is this pain radiating from. And with a few strength exercises and stretching exercises that I still do today because I do not want to wear those braces again, I am pain-free.
Yeah. And so it's funny that you say root cause because when we started this podcast, that was likely going to be the title, but I just didn't feel like it hit home well enough. But that is what, at the end of all of this, what I want more people to ask the question of is, what is the root cause of my problem, right? Because the Aleve and the muscle relaxers, they're just trying to treat symptoms. And symptoms are important because they tell me or any other provider what's going on, but we don't want to just turn the volume down on them or make them go away because they're there for a reason. Your body is asking for help or it's sending out flares for a reason. And you can either just make them go away at a cost, by the way. Like you said, your liver or something else in the body is going to take the hit. But ultimately, like finding the root cause is how you get things to go away. And so in your example, the bilateral elbow pain was coming from weakness within the rotator cuff. And when we can find those things, you actually eliminate the initial cause of the fire, or the epicenter, like I call it, and then you'll see the down chain symptoms start to disappear as well. And so I'm curious in your words and your experience, because I only see things from the provider perspective. When you went into traditional PT back in 2019, and then when you went through PT with me, what do you feel like were the differences, and why do you think it was more effective when you came in with me and our style of care as opposed to the traditional physical therapy route?
I mean, the traditional PT has a place, like traditional medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that in terms of a normal injury where you go and you get help. Maybe you broke your leg and you get your mobility back. But when you have, you're trying to find the root cause of something, and you leave PT because traditional medicine says you're only in PT, and insurance tells us, of course, because they drive a lot of the bus, they tell us that we can only have PT for a certain period of time. And so when you get to the end and you still have pain, it didn't go away. So all the things they were doing in traditional PT didn't help. And maybe it helped someone else, but it seemed that to me that they had a certain number of exercises to have you do. And if that didn't help, well, then we don't know what to do. So in coming to you, it was, we're going to find what that is. And maybe when we're finding what that is, we're also going to, it's like the whole body. We're going to find out what else is going on in terms of that. So it's like having someone on your side so that when something happens or you have a nagging, like my knee, they told me never do a front lunge, never run again. Well, that was probably good initially after I get through the initial surgery. But after 5-6 years, why can't I run again? Why can't I do front lunges? So there's no limitation on that. So it's the limitation of the PT. And then I think I have to live with this pain. I have to live with this pain because PT didn't do it. And I'm not going to take a muscle relaxer. I'm not going to take a leave every day. So this is just my new life.
I think that's what, from my perspective, I see as so frustrating is, again, once you leave those practitioners' office, you may be out of sight, out of mind to them, but you're like, hey, I still have a lot of life to live and my pain's not fixed. What do I do? And that's, for me, frustrating because I want to make sure that whenever you leave my office, the problem is solved, or the problem is identified and you know what to do next, ultimately. And so it is frustrating because it's either take this medication to like mute the symptoms, or it's eliminate all the things that hurt it. And like you said, there is a time and place, right? When you have an acute injury or a pain that came on, you need to decrease the amount that you're doing for a temporary amount of time to let the body heal it up a little bit, or at least start the process of healing. But to just simply eliminate like front lunges and certain squats and running, like especially if that is very important to someone, is like life altering. And the observation that I've made is as people get older, of course, we're going to have aches and pains because injuries are going to take place. And so if every time you get injured and you have a pain, you just do one less thing, well, by the time you get to 40, 50, 60, 70, you're living inside a box, you're sitting in a wheelchair and not moving around because everything hurts. Mm-hmm. And now that we know with pain science, like the less you do, the more you hurt. And then the more you hurt, the less you do. And the less you do, the more you hurt. And it becomes this vicious cycle, which makes it very easy to just start popping pills and taking the medication. And then here we are being a massive user of the medical system in a negative way, just dumping dollars into it and not actually getting any problem solved. And so that's what's so frustrating to me. And I'm glad that you went ahead and came up to the table and talked to me, because I think there's more and more practitioners like myself now, especially with our clinic that we've grown in size, that are trying to solve these problems, because we see the issue that you're talking about where, oh, we tried for, twice a week for 6 weeks. We don't know what to do. You should be better now. And when I was in student clinicals, there was a lot of people that went through that 6 weeks and they were no better. And from my perspective, it made sense because we gave them very basic exercises. Unsure if they did them at home, but why would they? Because they weren't seeing benefit. I don't blame them at all. And then they would just go away. And I'm like, cool. We helped 0 people today, is how it felt. And so it's nice to be able to do things a little bit different and actually see the results coming up ultimately. And so moving on, the next step that I kind of want to talk about, I'm curious with just these experiences that we've talked about so far, if you could change something about the medical system, and I know this is a wide question, if you could change something about the medical system, what do you think needs improved, changed, altered, taken away. What is the change that you see that needs to be different in your perspective?
Well, I would like to see that more of the functional medicine approach, which is finding the root cause of everything.
Absolutely.
And making that change, whether it is food, which I believe food will either heal you or it will kill you. And that's where we are in our society. But it takes a lot of self-discipline to realize that, because food can be really good and the really good food is really bad for you. So I'm an advocate for that, but I want preventive medicine. I don't want reactive, I've got this hurt or I need this. I want to know, what can I do to stay off medication? I want a practitioner that's going to help me stay well.
Forever, for a very long time. Yeah.
Yes. And then so your practice fit perfectly into my life because I want to stay well. I want to stay well, my body, in terms of, you age, you get hurt more often, or you have these aches and pains that you just can't figure out. So you're in the realm of, you're there and let's go on to the next. Okay, you help my elbows. Okay, what's next? Well, I've got arthritis in my thumb. Can you alleviate some of that pain? We worked on that and you helped with that. You helped with some hip pain. Now we're dealing with a deltoid injury that I did not get hurt in pickleball. I got hurt in our kitchen at our congregation.
Yeah, but honestly, somebody who was less fit, those things would have just hit the ground, but you caught them.
Yeah, but
reasons to stay strong and healthy.
But and the other thing is to be able to have, when I say I go to the gym or I go to Pilates, a common response I get, oh my gosh, how much does that cost? And I say, my answer is, well, how much is your health worth to you? So it's hard to answer that, for them to answer that back to me, because that is, yes, you pay to go to the gym. I could work out in my basement, but now I like the motivation of having other people, being accountable, and having goals set. My goals at home were just to do it. When I go to
get it done.
Yeah, right. Check the box.
Absolutely.
Okay, I walked today. I lifted my weights today. But did I push my body? So being accountable and all of that. So the part of it I wish I could change is so that some of this, or all of it, should be covered by insurance. Absolutely. And why can't we go find a practitioner who fits us? Why do we have to choose from this group of practitioners if you can't find someone who is of your mindset of, I want to be proactive about my life. I want to take very little medication. So do I have to? I'm looking for alternatives. If I know something's going on in my body, I'm going to go out on the internet and I look for good resources, Mayo Clinic and WebMD and things like that. And I want to find out what's going on. What do I think it is? And then I'm going to go seek help. By the time I do that, I have the questions in my mind that I know I want to have answered.
What's your experience in bringing that information to practitioners?
Well, they don't like it because they don't want you to try to self-diagnose. And I can see where that would stifle a lot of people from getting help because they think they may have cancer or they may have, some kind of life-altering disease. But to me, again, knowledge is power. And I want to be able to ask the questions. I don't want to go in the room, to the exam room, and sit there and have the doctor, I want to go with a plan in mind. I want to have a mindset already of what it is. Because if I'm going to get that cancer diagnosis or, I've got a life-altering, like my daughter needing a liver transplant, I don't want that shock to be in my mind where I can't ask any questions. So then you're definitely at a deficit. You've wasted a doctor's visit and you walked out of there and all you know is you have cancer. So when I come to you, I know what's going on with my body and I know what I have been through and what I've tried and what hasn't worked. But if I don't talk to you about it and you don't know where I'm coming from, we have that disconnect. And sometimes the doctor visits are too short to be able to have that.
Yeah, and I personally, as a provider, I enjoy when people have done research because a couple things. One, I know you're invested, right? Like you show up and you're like, hey, I've already like looked at this, and people oftentimes are like, I'm sorry, I Googled this, and I'm like, that's fine. What'd you find? Because one, it reminds me what information's out there. Because if I go Google low back pain, like none of what I find on the first however many pages I decide to scroll aligns with what I usually see people showing up with as a cause of their low back pain. Most low back pain is weakness within certain portions of the glutes. And then generally there's an overuse somewhere where the weakness of the glutes asks the low back to do much work, or they have faulty movement patterns, and none of that stuff is on Google. And so when they show up and they say like, hey, I Googled this and I found this, I usually say, well, why do you think it's that? I mean, most of the time I word it a little bit nicer, right? But like, why do you think it's that? Because sometimes when people say, oh, I think it's my SI joint, and I say, well, why do you think it's your SI joint? Well, because I have pain here and doing these things. That's the information that I'm looking for. Because when they start riddling off, oh, that diagnosis resonated with me because of these reasons, now I know that much more about whatever's causing their pain. And it's going to make me or allow me to diagnose and then also heal them a little bit easier. So it's quite helpful to me if people have went and done stuff, especially if they tried this exercise or tried that treatment, then I'll say, well, what results did you get? And it actually helps speed up the process. Again, that's something that in the PT world is beneficial. Not sure in the medical world, it is a different process. But I agree with you when you said, like, I feel like I wasted a doctor's visit. There is a massive shock factor with a diagnosis like cancer or something else, like a liver transplant. And so it's pretty hard. I've always been one that I'm immediate with questions, but my wife and some of my colleagues, they take 30 minutes, a couple hours, maybe a day to like really think things over and come back with questions. And if you're not prepared, it may be 6 weeks before you talk to that doctor again. So I like that you do your research ahead of time, come in prepped and ready to go, because ultimately you're consulting with an expert in that field, and the better prepared you are, the better results.
But in coming to you, if I would have just relied on coming to you weekly, biweekly, monthly, and only doing the exercises you had me do maybe a few days before I came in so you'd know that I'm doing it. I mean, I find that too. You get these exercises at PT and then you don't carry through and you don't do them every day or a couple times a day. And how you're not invested then. And how are you going to get better?
Yeah.
How are you going to get better?
Because the only way to change your life is to change your life, like change what you're doing. And I'll even tell people numerous times when they come in, because most of the time we'll see people for, 3 months or so, or maybe longer, depending on what they need. And what I've learned is most people need that much time. But for you, I sold you a plan of care that I think was going to last about 3 months. And within 3 weeks, we had solved most of your problems. And I told you, I said, I'm sorry, I'm not used to people doing their homework so quickly, which is why you got results. And I want that to be talked about because, again, most of the time people need longer term treatment or follow-up care or accountability because it takes that long. But when you do your stuff like immediately and you implement it and you give it to your personal trainer and say, hey, bake this into my workouts, you get results quickly, ultimately. And so that was a fun thing to see. And so you've talked about the medical system and what you want from it and things like that. And I'm sure I'm not the only one here in Wichita that operates aligned with your values. So have you found other providers that are similar mindset as me and you, trying to find the root cause, trying to be more preventative, trying not to just prescribe a pill as quick as possible? Have you found other providers that do that?
Yeah, Dr. Chad at V's clinic is great. He is functional medicine doctor. So again, you're going to pay out of pocket for most things. Some labs are covered and things like that. But he is of the mindset in terms of finding the root cause and not overmasking it with medication that, if you need to lower your cholesterol, then let's talk about diet. Let's talk about other things you can do. Stay on the medication, but let's see if we can lower it through other means besides medication.
Because it probably got there based off your lifestyle, right?
And some things are genetic, and, and you can only control certain things, certainly. But also, I want to shout out to Chance at Omnicut because everything, he knew when I had PT appointments, and he was on board with all of it. So I would tell him the exercises that you prescribed and what you found, and then he would add to that. And then he would not, the first few weeks, not do any of exercises during my workouts that would aggravate it. Or, would exacerbate the pain that's not necessary yet.
For sure. And that's what sometimes I think personal trainers are better than me and better than PTs on finding alternatives, coming up with exercises around like workout style and modifying, because that's what they do all day, right? Is prescribe exercises ultimately and take people through workouts. And so sometimes I'll actually lean on the personal trainer or the coach and say, hey, I want you to work this muscle, but just come up with an alternative. And they usually have like 9 or 10 in the back of their mind to come up with. And that was one thing I wanted to come back to is Omnicut. And it's probably one of the more superior personal training gyms. It's specifically located on the east side of Wichita, just short of Andover. And I've always noticed, I know Marquise and Bobby, and I really enjoy both of those people as humans, but I've always noticed it's always called Omnicut Motivational Fitness. And I'm sure there's a good amount of intention behind that. Do you have any idea why it's called that and why they don't just leave it as Omnicut?
Marquise, when he started it, he has a very motivational and inspirational, he's a motivational speaker.
Yeah.
And so it's very much a part of him, and his story is a phenomenal story. And when you talk to him, you can't help but be motivated because he is the most upbeat person I know. And he carries over into the gym. I mean, that gym is like a family.
Absolutely.
And we do things together. Someone has a bad diagnosis, we come together, we have fundraisers, we do fitness days together. I mean, it is a great place to work out. It's not just come in the gym, do your workout, and leave. I mean, it is, I consider probably 20 people there as my good friends that I would not have known if I stayed in the basement.
Exactly. And that's the other thing that it's almost like invisible or shadow value that you get from paying for a gym membership. Like here at Compelled Fitness on the west side, I think they have 200 and some members, and there has been people that have, been diagnosed with cancer at some point in time. And it's really fulfilling to watch kind of like how the people in this gym come together to help that person. And I have no doubt that they do the same thing at Omnicut and probably multiple gyms around the city, around the nation, because you have a bunch of like-minded humans coming together. And when you go through hard times, again, with weightlifting, it's manufactured hard times, right? By doing a hard workout, there's a lot of bonding that gets created by doing the workouts together, showing up, 4, 5, 6 times a week together and continuing to go through those things. And so you mentioned with Marquise, you've been with him for 7 years. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I remember listening to his story, starting out as a personal trainer and then moving to a gym. And then I think he's been to 2 or 3 locations with Omnicut.
Yes.
Were you at the location they are now? Was all 7 years at that location, or were you with him at a different location as well?
I've been at all 3 locations.
Oh, really? Okay. So there's Omnicut where it is now, which is right by, which school is it?
Trinity.
Trinity. Okay. So it's like right on Trinity's campus or right on the edge of it. Before that, they were over like 96 Greenwich.
Behind Star Lumber.
Okay. And then where were they at before that? I don't know if I know that location.
Central in Greenwich. And
Okay.
where it used to be like an RV boat, Crestview RV and boat. So right next to the bank. Yeah.
Man. Yeah. No, that's cool. And it's fun to see this grassroots story because to me, he's an overnight success that took 10 years, right? Where if you just show up at Omnicut, you are first of all going to be in awe of the beauty of it, the level of equipment, the level of trainers, the level of systems and organization. And it just seems like he has everything figured out. But when I heard his story, it was really eye-opening. Not surprising necessarily, but like really eye-opening of like, well, this guy just kept going, right?
He did. He started out at the Y.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has to start somewhere. And I've got another friend, David Acal, where he started at the Y too, and he'll post old videos of him in COVID, like doing the online workouts for the YMCA, and it's hilarious. But now he owns his own business and runs his own thing. And who knows, he may be another Marquise type story in the next 5 to 8 years. But I think one thing I've observed with successful people or people who find success, however you'd like to phrase or define it, is they failed multiple times. They just kept going ultimately. And it takes time, and you just have to, like, every time an obstacle comes up, continue to go around it. And I think the same would be with fitness and the medical system. When you get a diagnosis, never be against getting a second opinion on anything, whether it be a bodily injury or something like liver transplant ultimately. And so I'm curious if we continue to go on, we'll start wrapping things up here in the next 5-10 minutes or so. But what do you feel like would be really good advice to give someone? Let's go in the musculoskeletal side of things. What advice would you give someone who is in a position that you've been in the past, whether it's a year ago, back in let's go with 2019. So 2019, they get done with traditional PT and their hands are in the air because they didn't get results. what advice would you give to that person with whatever bodily injury they have, joint pain, muscle pain?
Well, don't live with it. Don't settle for it. It's just like going to a doctor and you don't gel and you don't feel like you have a relationship that you can, have with this doctor to be able to say, I want alternatives. So seek out alternatives, seek out other means of getting yourself back to your normal. So in looking at PT, if traditional doesn't work, then you find Doc Clayton, and you find him and you find a path and you get help, and you don't settle for having pain for the rest of your life, or limiting your mobility, or limiting your gym time, or your pickleball time, or anything like that. But don't settle for this is the status quo. I mean, look for alternatives, ask questions, get referrals. I mean, the best kind of referral you can get is from someone who's already been there.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Ask those questions. And again, just don't settle for it.
But I think most people, when you say don't settle, they just think, because I've been in this situation. I've talked to people in these moments where, well, the doctor said this, I don't know what else to do. Like, what would you say to that? Because I see where you're coming from, and I'm fully agreeing with you. But when they're given I tried PT and it didn't work, like, what do you say to that?
Then go find another person. I mean, there's like, how many PT places are there in Wichita?
Yeah. Like, oh, there's a lot. Yeah, for sure.
There's like 100 probably.
And
But
so, go ahead.
you just have to be the burr in the saddle. You have to be the one. If you want to get better, it's up to you. It's not up to the doctor, or it's not up to PT. If it doesn't work out, go get another referral if you need one, or go find someone else, or pay out of pocket. Get the help you need. I mean, insurance will cover, but maybe not 100% of it, or not 50% of it. But again, what's your health worth?
I think that's the hard part with the medical system is the medical system has done a good job of making or allowing patients to be the victim of their health.
Yes.
And so if you fall victim to your health, then it's not really in your control. And so because it's not in your control, you should probably just take this medication. And because it's not in your control, let insurance pay for it, but they really only pay for the stuff that they can profit on highly, that they can get you to subscribe to on a monthly basis, aka pills that you have to buy every month. Things like that, as opposed to preventative. Because the way I look at it, if you look at the healthcare system just as a business, which not everything is corrupted, but you can definitely see where the incentives are, is would they benefit more from prescribing a pill, or would they benefit more from saying, hey, change your lifestyle? Because I always joke that PT is a horrible business, because the better job that I do, the faster you leave my office, right, and the faster you stop paying us, right? But the goal for me is for you to go, like, take care of yourself. And then if anything comes up, come back and let me know. But that in the traditional model, that's not profitable. Right. That doesn't make money. Right. And so I think also you state the complaint, which I agree with you on. You state the complaint of, and why does insurance not pay for this? But when you see that insurance benefits from you going a certain way and buying certain things, and then the practitioner providing it benefits monetarily in that realm too, begs the question, why would they pay for preventative stuff? Because that would pull you out of their system of money making. And so I think that's ultimately the very sad answer. And I think that's why you almost have to pull out of like insurance based, at least somewhat, if you're looking for these things. Because sometimes if insurance is involved, there's a portion of that falls victim to profiting heavily off the unhealthiness, as opposed to if you, instead of spending your healthcare dollars on medication, you spend those healthcare dollars on gym memberships. You spend them on the little bit better food. You spend them on the better cookware to cook the food, so on and so forth. So where you're spending those dollars directly back on yourself, as opposed to into the system that's just silencing your symptoms ultimately.
Right. And it is your choice. And it's how you want to spend your money on your health, through food, through gyms, through PT, through all these things that are, you're navigating through life and you have hiccups and bumps and bruises and curves and all of this, but you just have to put your best foot forward in managing your own health. And just because insurance isn't going to cover it, or it doesn't mean that's not the best answer.
Agreed. Yeah,
And
no,
that's
a good point.
the hard part of it is some people think, well, if insurance doesn't cover it, then it's not safe, or it's not something that's holistically, like going to make me better. So that mindset is a hard one to deal with.
Yeah, it fully is. I fully agree. I do want to ask, what's next for you in maintaining your health? What are you looking forward to next? What have you changed recently, whether it be with what you cook, what you eat, anything you drink, new supplements, new workout regimens? What are you working on now, or what's getting you excited now in the health area?
Well, I just added to my mix going to Pilates, and I started it about a month ago.
Okay.
I won 2-week membership, and Body Bar is my new place to go. And it is something that I would never see myself doing, because it's kind of a mindset of slowing down. You can think about nothing but what you're doing because you're on a reformer the whole 40 or 50 minute class. And it has helped in terms of mobility and core strength, and also just the mindfulness of being present. And I wouldn't be mindful 40 or 50 minutes a day at home. And so I started doing that, and adding that to my mix just means to my husband that I'm not going to be home more. And so
I do want to interject. First of all, yeah, I agree with you. You weren't too thrilled. You're like, I won this thing, so I'm going to go get my money's worth. But 2 weeks in, what disappeared?
Well, I have had nagging hip pain, oh my gosh, for probably 10 years. And in less than a week, I came in to Doc and I said, guess what? I went to this Pilates, and let me tell you, I got my money's worth out of that 2 weeks, because I went every day but one to different classes. And in that week, my hip pain is gone and it has not returned. So why wouldn't I not go back?
Yeah. I mean, the proof is in the pudding there.
Right. And
I even worked with you on hip pain. We made it better, but didn't make it go away.
Right. And so this is now an added routine of my day of walking the dog and going to the gym and going to Pilates and playing pickleball too.
Yeah. And I mean, think about that. Like, imagine that I, or a medical doctor, or a doctor of osteopathy, imagine us writing down on a script pad, walk your dog daily, go to Pilates 3 times a week, strength train twice a week. Like, I think that's a pretty cool prescription.
That
right?
would be great.
Because that's what solved the majority of your aches and pains, as opposed to, Aleve and muscle relaxers. Now, what it does require, though, is a lot of effort on your part, a lot of routine changing, and a lot of other stuff. But I'll tell you what, not only is that a lot cheaper, but if you look at any research, that's going to prolong life and aim for that goal that you said you have, which is preventative medicine.
Right. And the mobility part helps you not fall or have injuries.
Or if you do fall, you don't break because
right.
you don't have
break
osteoporosis.
Anything. Right. Because you've been to the gym, you've lifted weights. So hopefully you have good weight bearing muscle and bones that are going to sustain that fall.
Absolutely. I want to wrap up with a couple fun questions, and then I may hit you with 1 or 2 deep ones. First fun question is, what is your favorite food or snack that you could eat nonstop?
Absolutely. Hands down, skinny popcorn. Popcorn is my jam.
Not what I expected at all, to be honest with you. Any certain flavor, or is it just the regular salted?
Very light salt.
Okay, gotcha. It's a little weird, but whatever. Okay, this one, not everybody uses supplement style food, but if they do, I like to ask this one. If you have a favorite protein shake that you drink, whether it's the powder that you mix, one that you just buy readily available, is there any favorite protein bars? Is there favorite protein muffins or protein Pop-Tarts, or just any sort of supplement type food? Is there any of those that you really like?
Well, my husband in his sleep can tell you the sound of the Vitamix. So I try to have a smoothie every day. I try to have a liquid meal. And so Daily Harvest has a great frozen, already comes in a biodegradable cup with a plastic lid with the vegetables and the fruit in it. And all you do is pour milk in it, pour it in the blender, and you have a smoothie.
Oh, that's pretty
I
interesting.
have
That's cool.
plenty of my own recipes, but that is probably my favorite because it's an easy go-to thing.
Yeah, convenience is key, so I totally get you there. This one can be very vague. What is a story that you just love telling? It can be inspirational, it can be funny, whatever you'd like, but is there any specific story that you just love telling?
I am one of those that is probably the prankster of the group. So we've been known, our fitness group at Omni early on, before the last iteration of the gym, we had group classes, which I loved, but then I'd also stay another hour for my own workout. And we've been known to come in, excuse me, one Halloween dressed as crybabies, because that's what we were called once. So we put on the adult diapers, and we got the the suckers that we had in our mouths, and we had these little hats and a blankie. And so when the trainer came in, we were laying on the mat with our knees up like a baby, crying and sucking on our suckers. So you never know.
Do you have a photo of this?
I do.
Okay, I'm going to ask you for that, and that'll be one of the social media posts. It's just going to be a picture of that.
And this last Halloween, I couldn't come up with anything. And so at the last minute, literally, I'm running out to the car. I decided I'm a gym rat now. So I dressed up as a rat.
Oh my gosh, this is fantastic.
And I put dryer balls where my muscles,
Yes.
so I put them here in my buns and also on my, and came in all in gray, my ears were out of paper plates.
This is perfect.
And then put the whiskers on.
Yeah.
My husband did not want to drive me there nor come in with me,
I'm sure not.
And I won the most creative
I love
costume.
it. Your commitment level is out of this world. Okay, so this is one of the more deep ones. Many people are either chasing a goal or they're running from and avoiding pain. What would you say that you are?
Always going to a goal. I mean, the pain is going to pop up here and there, but I don't want to think about it.
What would you say your goal is? We'll just say like a life goal.
Well, I have a lot of life goals. I want to live to be 100. I
Okay.
want to be living on my own. I want to be taking no medication, be driving, have my sight. More importantly, have my mind.
For sure. Real quick plug for this podcast. If you know anybody that has similar goals, please share this with them, because this is the goal of this is to get more people who have those goals to show up and listen, so we could bring on more and better people to figure out ways to get there easier. To finish out, is there anything else that you feel like needs to be said about the medical system, or you just want people to know, or you want people to keep in mind in this world when it comes to health, whether it be metabolically, muscles, whatever like genre of health? What else do you want to leave them with before we finish and wrap up?
I often say this to people too. God gives you one body, and you have to take care of it because no one else will take care of it. You have to be an advocate for your health, your mind, your body every day. So you have to think about what you put in it, what you fuel it with, and how you take care of it.
I like that. I like that a lot. I agree with you. And I think our current society makes things too easy and convenient, and it allows you to not feel responsible of your own health and your own body, but you are. And so I like that piece of advice. And so find people who will help you learn how to be very responsible with your health. And so thank you, Tammy, for coming in today. Is there any way that you want people to be able to contact you or ask questions or follow up of any sort? Some people will have social medias that they can go follow, but
They can just ask on the podcast.
Deal.
And you'll find
ask me and I'll pass on the question. How
You'll
about that?
find
How
me.
about that? Awesome. Well, thank you, Tammy, for coming on today. And that'll be all for us and learning how to heal without harm. Thank you.